Welcome, or hopefully welcome back to the Reluctant Entrepreneur Podcast, where we explore the triumphs, challenges, and lessons learned on the journey of building a business. Today, I'm thrilled to have a very special guest, Tarra Stubbins, the founder and CEO of Take It Easy Group, a company specializing in providing fractional executive assistant services to help startups and businesses scale successfully. With over 20 years of experience as a personal assistant, Tarra spent a decade on the road supporting renowned musicians and entertainers, including the Rolling Stones, the Red Hot Chili Peppers, Kenny Rogers, Nickelback, and Kiss. In 2007, after her extensive touring experience, Tarra established Take It Easy, Personal Concierge, to assist CEOs and entrepreneurs in managing their time and tasks effectively. Her passion for helping others succeed led to the creation of Take It Easy Group, focusing on offering experienced executive assistant services to seed and Series A companies aiming to scale efficiently. Tarra emphasizes the importance of time management, goal setting, and leveraging one's network as key strategies for success. She believes in empowering entrepreneurs to unlock their potential through better habits and effective delegation. And in the interest of time management, it's time to talk with Tarra. Tarra Stubbins, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. What an intro.
Well, you are well known in the internet world. You've got a reputation, so it's not hard to dig up information on you. Sometimes I'll interview a guest that is known within a very narrow space, but for some reason, you've made an impression. So it's easy to get that information. Thanks for being my guest. I really appreciate you being here. What's the story? I love stories behind company names. And I assume, since it's not the Tarra Stubbins company, there's a story behind the name. And I would almost like to answer it. I would love your answer to be, I work for the Eagles and I love the song. But maybe that's not the case.
Close. It's actually really close. When I came off the road and started my business, I was trying to think of a name, and my husband was actually on the road with the Eagles. And I had just gone to, the Eagles were playing our hometown, which is Toronto, and I had just gone to see the show and I guess see my husband as well. And they played the song
see my husband as well. Throw him in too, right?
Make him feel important.
Exactly.
And they played the song Take It Easy, and I was like, that's it. That's the name of my company. So it just fit for what I was doing then, and then it just fits for what I'm doing now as well.
Well, your job, whether you're a roadie or an assistant, is to make your client's life easier, right? So I guess that kind of fits.
It's true, but it's actually interesting because now that I'm working with founders and entrepreneurs, I always say that I don't want to, my job isn't actually to give you time to sit around and put your feet up and drink a Mai Tai. It's actually to understand what to concentrate your days on, what specific tasks you should be doing on a day-to-day basis. And so, a lot of times people think, oh, well, I'm going to take it easy when I'm working with Take It Easy Group. But it's like, no, you're just not going to be doing busy work anymore. You're still going to be really busy if you have big growth plans to scale and grow.
Yeah, I guess the Eagles didn't sing Take It Efficient and get stuff done.
Are there any efficient songs? I don't know.
I don't think that word exists in any cool song anyway that I know. You certainly picked a group of people to assist that have got to be the hardest in the world to work with. In the context of entrepreneurs are a squirrely bunch. We are a squirrely bunch. I know we make terrible bosses because we're just constantly starting ideas and not always finishing them. In my experience, I consider myself almost like an arsonist, but instead of starting fires, I start projects. And then I get all excited and want everyone to be excited, but I don't quite have the same level of interest to completing every project. My team has to either follow me with a broom and a dustpan to throw the projects away or finish them. And we're always distracted by the shiny object in the corner. I think one requirement to be an entrepreneur is to have a little bit of obsessive compulsive and ADD kind of all rolled up into one. Is that without throwing any of your customers under a bus, is that your general impression of most entrepreneurs?
100%. People always ask me who's harder to deal with, celebrities like rock stars or founders, and I always say I plead the fifth. I'm not saying I
Well, we
feel
know
like
the
they're kind of
answer.
the same,
Yeah. Well, I think
but it's
celebrities
true.
do think they're or entrepreneurs in their own head do think they're rock stars because you have to have an ego to some degree to think that you could beat the statistical odds of succeeding in business. U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics states that 80% of all businesses fail by year 15, 70% by year 10, like 50% by year 5. It's an awful statistic. And those are just statistics. Those are just facts. And I think for anyone to start their own business, they have to have a little bit of ego or naivety, and certainly a poor assessment of risk in order to think that they could beat those odds. I mean, the worst odds in Vegas, the even money bets in Vegas are generally 50-50 or 49-51, somewhere around there. And statistically, you have a much better chance at winning in blackjack or in roulette than you would starting a business. So I think it's a requirement to have confidence that you could beat those odds.
Yeah,
Is
I
that
really think that it's not necessarily a requirement to start a business because I find that there's a lot of false information out there making it seem like starting a
yeah,
business is really easy.
yeah,
And so I think a lot of people go into it and are like, oh, yeah, I'm going to start this business. And in year one, I'm going to be making at least $1 million profit. And like, here I go. But to continue the business and to keep going through those really hard times. And, a lot of us lose our motivation of like our excitement of starting a business within, I don't know, sometimes 2 weeks, sometimes 2 months, sometimes 6 months. But actually, to continue that is what I think is the hardest part and why most businesses fail because people go into it thinking that it's a really easy thing. Everyone on the internet's doing it. Why don't I do it too?
right. And there are people who make money trying to convince you how easy it is. Just send them money and start your business, get the LLC, whatever. What inspired you to transition away from being a celebrity personal assistant to starting Take It Easy and eventually Take It Easy Group? Was there a defining moment that pushed you toward entrepreneurship yourself?
There was. I'd love to tell this story. And if you have a minute, I will tell it.
We have all the time you have.
So I was out on the road, as you mentioned, with a number of really big rock stars, and I absolutely loved what I was doing. I have always loved helping people, no matter what it was, whether it was getting them coffee or cleaning up the, gross tour buses or whatever I was doing. But it was just the fact that I was helping people that I really, really cared about. And so after a number of years, we, obviously as a personal assistant to some of these really high, well-known rock stars, there's some crazy requests that get asked. And maybe some of your listeners have heard of the brown M&M story where Van Halen made them the assistants pick out the brown M&Ms, but it was just because they wanted them to actually read the rider or the list of requests. And if they knew that the brown M&Ms were picked out, then, they
So
knew
that
that
wasn't so
everything
much
else
brown
was
M&Ms, it was a test. I've read a bunch
exactly. So
of
there's
there was a website I used to look at a long time ago. I don't even know if they're still around. It's called The Smoking Gun, and they would somehow get copies of writers on for various well-known celebrities, and some of the writers were really, really particular. Certain brand of certain things, or certain temperature of certain things, and
oh yeah.
all of that. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
a tough one.
so Mick Jagger used to make us paint his hotel rooms a very specific shade of beige everywhere we went. And this is actually not the story, but there was this one time we were in Mumbai in the Taj Mahal Hotel, which is one of the fanciest hotels in India.
With gallons of paint.
Ancient, ancient. And on the wall was thousands of year old gold leaf wallpaper. And what did we do? We took that down and we painted the walls beige. And then we put it back up. as best we could and moved on to the next city. But yeah, crazy rider requests. So
No
this
wonder
one rock
concerts cost so
star,
much. The cost for
right?
your room deposit is a lot in that case, right?
True.
Wow.
So this one crazy rock star, I'm not going to mention his name, but on one of his crazy requests was every time he traveled and stayed in a new place, and he would ask me to like unpack his suitcase for him in his hotel room. And, being out on the road, sometimes that was every 2 nights, every 3 nights, sometimes back to back nights. So, we were unpacking and packing a lot. And his request was that every time his toothbrush came out of the suitcase, he wanted it to be sanitized in the hotel dishwasher. And this was a while ago. So this was before like electric toothbrushes really were that popular. They were like kind of large back then. Um, and so people always ask me, one, did I do it? And I always say, yes, I actually did. I never thought to not do it. And number two, people say, well, why didn't you just go out and buy a new toothbrush every time? And I always say, I never ask rock stars why. They do crazy stuff. You just don't want to be involved. You just
It's
kind
their
of go,
world.
yep, okay.
Yep.
Yep, sure. So a lot of times we would stay in hotels that we'd stayed in before, and they knew that we were coming. They were like, "Oh yeah, here's this crazy woman with this toothbrush needing to put it in this dishwasher," and they would allow me to do it. But other times we would stay in hotels where we'd never been before. Maybe it was a new hotel, new city, something like that. And this one time we were in Shanghai at a brand new luxury hotel. And there I was in the back of the kitchen trying to ask them to put this toothbrush in the dishwasher. And they didn't speak English. I didn't speak their language. And I was trying to, gesture, toothbrush,
Yeah.
dishwasher.
Makes no
And
sense. Yeah.
no, it was like the most awkward conversation I probably have ever had in my entire life. And I remember standing there with toothbrush in hand thinking, there's got to be more to life than this. And that
Hmm.
was my big aha moment where I knew I absolutely loved helping people. I just wanted to help more than one crazy rock star at a time. So I finished off the tour, came off the road, and opened up my first business with zero business knowledge at all. I was a dirty roadie. I had no idea what I was doing, but I had a dream and desire to help as many people as I could achieve their dreams.
That is probably the most interesting journey into entrepreneurship I have ever heard, and probably will hear. Um, it beats washing dirty toothbrushes. Yeah,
Right?
that's that's it. So all of the experience you had with dirty toothbrushes and cleaning dirty buses and getting coffee and removing brown M&Ms and M's and all the other crazy things that you did, working with these high profile, sometimes demanding clients. How did that prepare you for running your own business? I would assume a lot of things in comparison are easier, right? But I'm sure you learned some lessons and you learned some skills that maybe you didn't have before you started, getting on the bus.
Oh, yeah, for sure. It's actually interesting. So, when I came off the road, as I said, had no business background at all. I had no idea what I was doing. And so, what did I do? What do we all do? I Googled it. And back in 2007, Google wasn't as sophisticated. There was no like Chat GPT or anything to really help me out there. But I Googled how to run a successful business. And Google told me two things. One, it told me to hustle, which I absolutely hated because I couldn't quantify it. And I was looking for Google to tell me, because I, again, had no idea what I was doing. I was looking for Google to tell me, like, send 100 cold emails a day or, go talk to 17 people or
You wanted the
whatever. And
checklist. You wanted the checklist like
I
a
wanted a
writer. Yeah.
checklist. Yes. And it wasn't. And also in 2007, there wasn't really a lot of like business communities then. There was definitely no co working spaces. Social media was very new. A lot of it didn't exist then. So it was really hard to just go out and find a mentor who I could ask as well. And a lot of people who were entrepreneurs back then were like real estate agents and mortgage brokers and these like IT consultants, which I didn't understand what they were doing. So it was just hard for me to connect with somebody. So that's why I was Googling it and looking for this like checklist. And so I didn't understand hustle. So I was like, I don't know what I'm doing there. So I'm just going to not like that word for the
Well,
rest of my
hustle's too
life, which I
abstract.
still don't. It
Hustle's
was
too
way too
abstract.
evident.
I mean,
And
you
it
could
was just
hustle
telling me to
and
be
waste your
busy.
time, right? It
Yeah,
didn't say what to hustle
exactly.
on. Yeah.
Exactly. And now again, maybe Google would tell me, oh, I'm sure you could get a lot of good lists in like ChatGPT now and stuff. But back then, obviously that didn't exist. And, but the second thing it told me was to network. And that
Hmm.
was like, oh, yeah, of course. I've built my successful career, chasing rock stars around the world because of my network. Why am I not leveraging my network now? Like it was just a kind of light bulb moment that I needed. And I always knew that I would be nowhere in the assistant space without my network. I had to lean on them every single moment of the day, usually, to get these requests done. And so I really understood the networking, and it's something that I have carried through my entire career. And I tell people all the time how important it is to network and to nurture your network and not use your network like, again, oh, you're going to give me this and you're going to give me this, but
Yeah.
actually put time and effort into networking. And a lot of people tell me, networking is a long-term game. It takes so long. I go to a networking event, I don't get any clients out of it. But that's not really what you should be doing when you're going to
That's right.
networking events. And so that's something that I really understood too from, these celebrities and really highly successful people that I was around. They leverage their network unbelievably as well. And I think they are the best people at leveraging their network. And that's why they have become so successful. So it was a really big kind of another aha moment for me of looking back and like, what are the lessons that I have been able to learn being surrounded in these lives of these really successful people?
Yeah, that's interesting. When I first started in my industry, I work in the electronics industry, and I started there 40 years ago this year as child labor. And I was a college dropout. I did not belong in that industry. It's a very scientific industry, mostly engineers, PhDs, scientists of some sort. And somehow they left the door open and the cat came in. That was me. And I remember giving my first lecture at a conference. I was I was in a cold sweat because I knew I would be outed as not belonging. When I was a kid, my parents subscribed to Highlights magazine, and I know from my grandkids that magazine is still around. And there was one section in it every month that it was called "What Doesn't Belong," and it was a picture, for example, of a kitchen, and then they'd have in the kitchen there would be a mixer, an oven, a refrigerator, a blender, and a chainsaw. I was the chainsaw. I did not belong, and I was convinced that I would be outed. And I survived my first speech, and I didn't die, although I thought I did. But I realized at that moment I need to get to know people. This is crazy, and I felt alone and naked on the stage, and I and I realized part of that was because I don't know anyone. Everyone was a stranger. My peers were strangers. The audience were strangers, and as a defense mechanism, I just put every ounce I could into networking. And I think the point you made, Tara, is really valid, and that is you don't network to get orders. You don't network to get those people to buy from you. That's something else. You network to form connections. And it's kind of like that Kevin Bacon's 7 degrees of separation. You will find clients, not usually from the people you network with, but indirectly, maybe 2 or 3 degrees away. I think that's really good advice. And I think it's very difficult for entrepreneurs to want to network because we as a group tend to be very independent. I can do it myself. I don't need any help. I'm the smartest person in the room. And that may be true. It may not be true. But that mentality stops us from seeking help. And
Yep.
and yeah, I don't think we can overvalue networking enough. And I'm very grateful that I started networking early in my career. And that helped accelerate me. So when you first launched Take It Easy and Take It Easy Group, what were some, besides not knowing what to do, what were some of the biggest challenges you faced as you started to learn things to do? That could be financial, it could be recruiting, it could be a number of things. But what were some of the biggest challenges? Limit it to about 300 or 400. And how did you and how did you overcome the ones that you bring up as an example?
Yeah, so I want to talk about the one that I've been sharing a lot on, social media because I feel like it's really important right now to talk about it. I feel like there's a gap in, as I was kind of hinting at the beginning, of people, on social and out there in the world who are like, look at me, I started this like really successful business and here I am making millions of dollars and
Yeah.
nothing has ever gone wrong. So I really, really value this question. I always say that being an entrepreneur is like deciding to wake up every day and run full speed into a brick wall 17 times and being like, oh, that was fun. Now I'm going to go to sleep and get up and do it all again tomorrow.
You too.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, yeah,
But
great.
that was
I'm
just me.
bleeding. So, but I also find in conversations, people are now getting a little more open about talking about their failures, but they're not talking about how they get through their failures. So there seems
Right.
to be a gap from like, I screwed up at this point, and then look at me, 2 months later, I'm now making $1 billion again. And there is a lot of gap and thought and hard times that go through, that entrepreneurs go through after, one or two failures. And I think when you first start your business, the failures are there. But at least for me, they weren't as big as the failures that happened when I was more established. I had more at stake, I guess, when the failures happened. And so, starting Take It Easy Group, I had a really wonderful experience of, 10, 12, 13 times in the business year over 1 year. We 40x'd our business. And I
That's a
know
little
it's like,
scary. That brings a
well,
whole nother, we'll get into that later, but that brings a whole nother level of difficulty, right?
well,
Scale.
that's what happened. So I made some, again, I was many years into my entrepreneurial journey, but still no business background. I was running a bigger team than I'd ever had before, and everything was moving a lot faster than I even knew how to keep up with. And the first mistake I made was I hired a friend of mine. And I hired her to be our head of sales and partnerships.
Now ex-friend?
And how did you
Mm-hmm.
guess?
Been there.
So, yeah, so that started really well. And she actually was one of the ones who helped me grow the business so quickly. But we were mistake number one, hiring a friend. Mistake number two, we were chasing vanity metrics because it was really cool to say, look at us, we have 50 clients. Look at us, we have 100 clients. Look at us, we have, and not necessarily the right client or the right metrics that was actually growing our business sustainably. And we had zero foundation to actually build the business because we had grown so quickly and we were chasing those vanity metrics that we were building the wall and the roof of the house before the concrete truck was even in the driveway.
Yeah.
So there was no foundation. So you can probably guess what happened. We scaled massively and then we crashed. And we crashed because there was no leadership. There was no foundations and systems in place. And especially with our hiring, we were literally asking people to come on our team. And the only hiring question was, can you start tomorrow? Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
You'll work for this and you can start tomorrow.
Yeah.
Yep.
Perfect. Can you pass a background check? Can you start tomorrow? Is this your salary? Great. You're hired. And so obviously they weren't meshing with our clients. Our clients we were hiring or we were bringing on, again, just to say that we had clients and they weren't necessarily the right clients for us. So they were leaving unhappy. Our team was leaving unhappy. And so we scaled really quickly and then we crashed to the point where I almost went bankrupt. at the end of 2023. Lost my entire leadership team, went from, millions of dollars to like 40K MRR, and like really had to take a moment to kind of figure out, what am I doing with my life? Like, who am I? What am I doing? Where am I? And just like, do I still want to do this? And after having a moment of obviously blaming, because I feel like as humans, we first blame everybody else. But then I realized, and I don't know how I realized it, but something inside me told me that, you can't blame everyone all the time. You have to obviously take the responsibility, which I knew. I knew a lot of the decisions were mine. So I owned that responsibility, and I really knew that my dream and my passion and my big goal was to help more than one crazy rock star at a time. And I wanted to keep doing that. And so if there's any lessons there besides not hiring a friend and actually building the foundation before you build anything else and not chasing vanity metrics, it's also holding on to your goals and your dreams and not letting those go, because that is the only thing that is going to help you stay motivated and keep on pushing when life gets really, really rough. And looking at those successful people that I've been surrounded by, they create their own motivation. They don't wait for lightning strike moments to happen. And I'm a huge believer that success is built by how much motivation you can create by yourself. And I learned that lesson the hard way.
That's 100% right. There's a difference between growth and scaling. And a lot of people use those words interchangeably, but I think they're different. What you were doing was growing. Scale is proportionate. So scale reinforces the foundation, it reinforces the walls, it reinforces the roof and the window, all those things. And I think a lot of businesses fail because they grow and they don't scale. It's disproportionate growth. They get top heavy, for example, more than the foundation can withhold, and then it just collapses. And you were talking about failures. I was on a podcast. I was a guest on a podcast. I was sitting on the other side. I was sitting on your side of the table earlier this morning, and the last question the host asked me was, if you could talk to your 20-year-old self, what advice would you give? And that's a little bit of a cliche question, but it's a good question. And my answer, which I hadn't thought about before, was, I don't think I'd tell me anything. And he said, why? And I said, because the failures I made, and I made so many. I've had my business for 33 years, and I've made many very, very near fatal decisions. I learned from all those things, and I got wiser and stronger for all those things. And I do not want to go through those again. They were awful, and I was near bankrupt many times, and out of motivation, and just kept going back. But I am grateful for those mistakes that I made, because I learn more from mistakes than from success. Because I might be successful, but I could just be lucky. It doesn't mean I'm good. Broken clock is right twice a day, right? So I could just be that broken clock and just happen to hit at the right time. But I think if I warned myself of everything I was going to do wrong, I wouldn't be as strong. I wouldn't be as savvy. I wouldn't be as wise as, if I am any of those things, I wouldn't be those things today were it not for experiencing the failures. And for those who watch my show or listen to my show, they know I keep using this analogy. It's just a metaphor. It's not meant to be literal, but I call it the business gods. The business gods that are responsible for business rules and all of that. And I think that when I make a mistake and I learn from it, the business gods are pleased. And there are times when we should have not made it. We should have failed. By all definition, by all metrics, we should have failed. And for some reason, we didn't. And I think that the business gods, whatever the case may be, just gave us a pass and let us go. And I think that I spent many years judging myself for failures. And then as I started talking to more entrepreneurs and meeting with people like yourself and and others, I started to realize that no, those were change agents. Those were needed. Those were exactly what I needed to go through, because I can learn by someone just telling me, which I don't really learn that way. I'm very conceptual, and I need the experience, and I need to see it myself. I'm just one of those kind of, from Missouri, you got to show me. I got to see it. I got to experience it. I got to taste it. I got to smell it. I got to have the fear. I got to do all that for it to stick and really change me. Otherwise, I'm very stubborn. If I think I'm doing it right, I'm going to do it right.
That makes a good
even if it's wrong.
entrepreneur, though.
Yeah,
Don't
well,
touch the
eventually.
fire. Well, I'm going to touch the fire because I have to learn myself. Like, you can tell me all you want, but my hand's going in that fire at some point.
Yeah, because I'm not going to get burned. Right. So 2023, things were tough. That's not that long ago. And how has your company evolved since then? I know you've learned some lessons. You've decided that you are not going to fail. You are going to, and you decided no one else can motivate you except you. How has your company evolved since this kind of 2.0 or 3.0 or 4.0 Tarra Stubbins?
Yeah, it's really interesting. So I'm like you. I get asked that question actually on podcasts a lot of what I would tell myself like 20 years ago or when I first started my business. And I actually say the exact same thing.
Oh, good.
Because it's, again, I would never be where I am today without the lessons that I've learned. I also am always fascinated with, for some reason we are still going, but I always love to teach a lesson. Like, I know a lot of people, like for me, one of my biggest stresses at night when I was going through that was, how am I going to make payroll? And I would listen to a lot of these podcasts. I would read books. I would go to conferences. I would try to do as much as I possibly could to like learn what other people were doing. But a lot of it seemed very, I call it like fluffy advice. It just wasn't very, again, tactical, like Google in 2007. And I remember listening to a pretty, like one of the top 10 podcasts with a very well-known female entrepreneur on it. And she was telling about her like bad times in business. And then she said, but what really got me through was every Sunday night I had a bubble bath. And I was like, that's it. I'm done. Like, I can't listen to this anymore because I know that self-care is absolutely 100% important. And I am a huge believer in self-care, and you have to have downtime. You can't, push forward, hustle, grind, whatever you want to call it, all day, every day. You have to stop at some point. I get that. But having a bubble bath every night on a Sunday is not going to help me make payroll. And I wanted someone to tell me how to make payroll.
If that's
so
it,
it's
run
like
the bath now. Right, exactly.
Right, exactly. Is money coming out? Like, how is this happening? So again, I think that when people are going through these really hard times, that and the lessons that they're learning is to be really understanding of like how your mind is processing them and the decisions you are making, or the decisions people maybe that you're listening to are making in those times. So like, I'd be curious for you, when you were going through some of those hard times, what were some of the like main, and now I know I'm like interviewing you, but
That's
what would
fine.
be some of like the main, kind of thought processes that you went through to like help you actually get through the other side? I know for me, it was like, okay, I know that I'm in this do or die situation. So I'm literally going to, and networking is, a massive thing that I talk about and I always lean into. So I am going to talk to everybody in my network and tell them my problems until somebody helps me figure out a solution. And that's how I got through at least those first like hard days of it. But I'd be really curious to know kind of how you got through one of your kind of really rough times.
Yeah, I learned, and this wasn't easy, it took a long time. I learned to let go of my ego. That's the first thing. And I loved my ego. My ego was my friend. My ego was my protector when I started the business. My ego wouldn't allow me to consider that 80% of businesses fail. It won't be me. My ego protected me. And I think there's a place for ego, but not a long-lasting place for ego. At some point, you have to put it aside. So that was one. And once I put my ego aside, it was pretty hard to maintain an ego when things were all falling down around me. Then someone gave me some advice, and they said, make peace with the worst. What's the worst that can happen? Will you die? Well, no, but my business might die. Okay, but you're safe. Okay. What's the worst that can happen? Well, I can lose my business. And, well, then I have to start over. Okay. Make peace with that. You don't want that. You're not giving into that. You're not manifesting that, but make peace with it. And if you just kind of make peace with the worst, as easy and Pollyannish as that sounds, and it takes work to do that, it's not so scary. I realized that I was making a ton of fear-based decisions. I need to cover payroll. So I'm going to sell a piece of equipment below cost because I can get that easy sale. I will cover payroll next week. I won't make any money on it. In fact, I will lose money on it, but that's not my problem today. I was solving day-to-day problems without the ability to even consider next month's problem and the following month's problem. So I had to kind of make peace with the worst. I had to let go of my ego, and I had to learn how to not make fear-based decisions. So I'll describe one example. I'm at an intersection. I need to make a left or a right. So a business decision. I was working with a consultant, and I affectionately refer to her as Yoda. She does not enjoy that term, not physically, but she's crazy. She's a bit nutty. And her advice is crazy, but very counterintuitive. It made no sense in my analytical, techie world. But I would listen because I had no choice. My building was on fire. I needed to jump out the window. That's the only thing that made sense. So I'm like, all right, well, nothing I try is working. Let's try the crazy stuff. So I'm like, okay, I'll open my mind and I'll consider the possibilities, as she would say. And she said, okay, do you want to go left or right? I said, I don't know. I mean, I really want to go left, but that takes too much money and time, and I don't have money or time. She goes, but if you had all the money in the world and all the time in the world, what would your decision be? Oh, I'd make a left, obviously. And I'm like, but, and she's like, stop. You know the right decision. The right decision is to go left. Okay, but no, stop. And I'm like, how can I stop? She said, that's the right decision. Now start thinking about how to come up with the time and money. Now that sounds so easy, but I think what happens once we make a decision to do something, the universe, the business gods, destiny opens a new path. And we almost manifest what we need because the world is waiting. Again, business gods, totally metaphorical, not spiritual, but the business gods are saying, well, we're not going to provide any assistance if he's not even willing or she's not willing to even make a decision which way to go. Once you make the decision, yeah, we need to go left. The money comes, the time comes. You find a way to do it because it's one step at a time. And it's a lot easier for me to look at that kind of one step at a time. Okay, all right, we know this is what we need to do. How are we going to do it? Well, we need more money. How are we going to bring more money in? That's profitable. And then we just start thinking differently. And we think differently about thinking differently. And all of a sudden, it's not as much of a problem as it was before. And I know if I sat saying, I can't make that decision because I don't have the money, I would never have the money because I have not decided this is what we need to do. I've already rejected it due to the fear, the lens of time and money. And we see the world in business and in personal lives, we see the world through a set of lenses based on our experience, based on our fear, based on a whole number of factors. And sometimes the best thing we can do, I think, is take off those glasses and see the world as it is and take away the lens of fear and the lens of money and the lens of failure and be comfortable with failure. Embrace the worst. It won't kill you.
Yeah.
And
I love that.
That worked for me. And I have this strong I need to know how things work. I need to draw a line. I need to show causation. I need cause and effect. And it drove me crazy. I would not embrace these principles when I first heard them because, okay, well, all right, fine. I got to go left. How's the money going to come in? And her response was always trust the process. Trust the process. So I'm like, that's too easy. That sounds Pollyannish. And I'm like, well, trust the process. So today, I do some crazy things that wouldn't make sense at a peer CEO peer group meeting. They'd tell you you're crazy. But I now don't need to understand how they work because I understand they work. And to me, 100% success rate at that type of decision making is the evidence I need, and the only evidence I need to know it works. Just trust the process. It will never fail, and it has never failed me when I finally embrace it. But I'm still skeptical. I'm still, Missouri-minded. Like, show me, show me, show me. But sometimes the world doesn't show you. Other than sometimes you have to have confidence first, and then it'll show you. And then that helps the next time and the next time and the next time. You've built a career on helping others, whether it's brown M&Ms or washing toothbrushes or whatever. In an interview that you gave on Auburn Lane, I watched that interview, and you were talking about the Guns N' Roses insurance company. Every performer has an insurance company. Required the band to start within 15 minutes of the promised time, or else they don't get paid. It's a free concert. And I know that Axl Rose was quite infamous about running late. So you and the rest of your crew had to ensure that band was not just on stage, but performing within 15 minutes of the start time, which I don't think I've ever been to a concert that started, 15 minutes within the start time. So that's quite a daunting task. So what are the biggest time management mistakes you see maybe your clients or people like your clients, entrepreneurs in general, make, and how can they avoid those?
I would say that the number one mistake is people not understanding the difference between a priority task and an emergency task. And a lot of times, emergency tasks are the ones that are screaming the loudest at us, but they're not necessarily a priority that is going to move our business closer to the finish line or closer to the goals.
Yeah, I've long said we don't have
And
time. We don't have time to work on the important because we're busy working on the urgent. And
exactly.
and then good becomes the enemy of great at that point, right?
Exactly. And there's so many different ways to procrastinate. Sometimes I think everybody procrastinates. And, it might not be, you might be like, oh, yeah, I can sit down and get into a task right away. I don't procrastinate at all. But is it a task that you should
Right.
be doing at that
Right.
moment? Or are you checking your email, which
There's
probably
a false sense of
doesn't need to be
security to
done?
staying busy, right? And it's easy to put off the task you don't want to do when you have justifiable tasks you can do or want to do. You're right, but it's the hard stuff that just always gets reprioritized.
Always. So I have an 80-20 rule where 80% of the tasks that I do on a day-to-day basis has to move the needle towards my big goals at some way. It can be a little move of the needle. It doesn't have to be a massive move. And then 20% can be kind of the other life stuff because, of course, we're all adults. We all have to, go to the dentist and get our oil changed and renew our passports and things like that. So those are definitely important tasks that can't be forgotten. But that can take up 20% of my day. The rest is, if you have big goals and you are really wanting to move your business forward and your life forward, then you need to be spending 80% of your day on those tasks that are actually going to move the needle. And it's that simple. And a lot of us get confused with I always say, if you have to justify the task, then it's probably that justify that a task is like a priority needle moving task, then it probably isn't one in the first place. I talk to a lot of people who I try to coach through this, and I'm like, is that a priority task? And they'll give me a 10-minute answer. And I'm like, that's not
That's
what
just
an actual
justification.
priority.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're procrastinating on what you actually know what you have to do. And, I also am a true believer in successful entrepreneurs, successful people, whether they're celebrities or not, always are okay. They may hate it, but they're okay with doing the boring. And they really understand that some of these boring, mundane tasks are actually the ones that are going to get you closer to the goals. And they're the ones that a lot of the time take up that 80% of your day.
Yeah, they're
But
the
they're
unsung
okay with
heroes of
doing it.
tasks, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And so they are just the ones, again, with going back to kind of creating your own motivation. Successful people are the ones who can understand that, like, they have to do these boring tasks. They have to, like, whether they have to read a motivational quote to get them to do it, or, dance and sing, or do 8 jumping jacks, whatever they have to do, they know that doing that task is what's going to get them closer. Where a lot of people who fail are the ones who are like, that task is so boring, I'm not going to do it. Or I'm just going to wait till tomorrow. And then they just keep pushing it off.
Yeah. Entrepreneurs often struggle with delegation. Because we can do something ourselves, we do something ourselves, whether we're the best at it or not. What advice would you give, and have you given, to those who are hesitant to let go of something and delegate it?
Yeah, it's actually interesting. So I've learned a number of things from being surrounded by really successful people and the celebrities that I've been able to work with. And one of those things is that they delegate. And they delegate everything. They have assistants for everything. They have hair and makeup. They have stylists. They have, house cleaners. And a lot of us who are especially first starting out, we can't delegate everything. But I always say to try and figure out something, even if it's one little task or, minute of your day that you can delegate out. You don't have to spend money on it. You can trade, you can barter, you can ask your neighbor to walk your dog when they're walking their dog, and then, make them a cake or something, or say that you'll walk both the dogs the next day, or whatever it is. But a lot of people get stuck in, I don't have the money to delegate, so I can't delegate at all. I'm not a celebrity. I'm not going to delegate. Another thing that I really highly suggest if you're struggling of what tasks to delegate is to really understand which ones take up the biggest amount of your time. So if you need to do a time audit, I love a good time audit. So you can tell kind of where you are spending your days. And to do a time audit, I suggest that you write down what you're doing every 15 minutes of the day for at least a week. And I understand it is counterintuitive to do that. It takes a lot of time. I also don't want you like waking up and sleeping every 15 minutes. Obviously, you can skip that part. But, being as specific as possible will help you understand where your time is going. And then you'll have buckets and categories of how you're spending your time. And you can look at it and you can say, okay, well, I actually don't have to do this. And imagine if I delegated out all these, I don't know, cleaning tasks, for example, of my house, then I'm going to have 8 hours a week back. Like, oh my goodness, this is amazing. Or I'm doing all these admin tasks, maybe, and that's taking up 20 hours of my week. Maybe I can delegate that out. So understanding what tasks you can delegate, understanding what repetitive tasks you have are also important, because usually the repetitive tasks are the easiest ones to delegate out. And also understanding the tasks that you are not an expert in. I know when I first started my business, I did not want to delegate out bookkeeping because I didn't want anybody looking at my finances. And so I took it on myself and I hated it. I would procrastinate on bookkeeping for like years sometimes. I was so behind on my taxes. I do not recommend this to anyone. And,
Pay your
and it was
taxes,
just
folks.
because
Pay your taxes. That's what
pay
I'm
your
hearing.
taxes. And also, I was in Canada. The CRA wasn't as, mean as the IRS, so I hear. But anyway, still pay your taxes.
The IRS can be mean. Yes, exactly.
I hear. Yeah, so delegate out those tasks that you are procrastinating on, and that takes up that mental energy. It's actually really interesting. On a little side note, I have actually been procrastinating on a task since April of last year. So I don't know, 8, 9 months. And the reason why I was procrastinating on it was because I honestly thought it was going to take me days of like really like serious thought process to do it. I didn't like doing it. It involved finances for the business, and I just kept pushing it off and going, I'll do it later. I'll do it when I have like at least 3 hours to get started. Finally, this last weekend, I thought, okay, I'm just going to sit down and give myself 2 hours. And whatever I finish in the 2 hours, great. At least I've started. And I like put on some heavy, crazy death metal music so I could like pump myself up so I could actually start doing this task. I sat down. The task took me 20 minutes. I'd
Hmm.
been procrastinating on it for 8 months. I was done, and I have never slept better in the 8 months in my, than I did for the last 3 nights, because it's just this weight lifted off your shoulder. So if you're really scared about delegating, now I didn't delegate out that task, but you can use it for delegation. If you are really, nervous about delegating, think about the weight that can be lifted off your shoulder, even for those tasks that you just really, really dread doing.
Yeah, if I have a lot of projects due, it it weighs me down. I ironically become less productive the more
Yeah.
I know, the more deadlines that are looming, because I get paralyzed. It's like
Mhm.
the deer in the headlights, right? I just don't move out of the way of the car, and I let the deadline hit me. And there is a huge satisfaction. I can't tell you how many times I've experienced this where I put off stuff, I put off, and I finally either get it done or get it done through delegation. Either way, the relief and then the instant productivity that comes in, because, oh, wait a minute, I've got that done. I can get these things done. And it's never, ever as difficult or as horrible as we thought it was. It just grew in our head, it just expanded in our head. But it's amazing. The best way to get stuff done is to get stuff done, because that just,
Yeah.
it snowballs, and you get this. I refer to it as being in the zone. We've all had that experience where we're in the zone. We don't hear anything from the outside world. We're creative. We think an hour went by and 6 hours have gone by, and we're just in that zone, super productive, super creative. And part of getting in that zone is clearing out everything else that's
Yeah.
cluttering your ability to get into the zone. And
Yeah.
if we can do that by just knocking off stuff, just getting it off the list, that opens a space to become super productive, super creative, if that's what you do. And so it's, want to get stuff done, start getting stuff done. And then you'll get like hyper productive.
Make your bed in the morning, I always say. If people
I
are
heard,
struggling
I've
throughout the
heard
day,
speakers say that. Yeah, that the
yeah, I
first
always
part
say
of
at
success is
least
make your
it's
bed.
exactly.
Yep.
And it's not because you need a clean room or anything like that, but you can actually go, okay, I did something. On to the
Yeah.
next thing.
It sets you up for the next thing. It really does. It changes your mindset from trying to figure out.
Because like I feel like we've all done this, you have so many things that you have to do and you create a to-do list. And then sometimes you put things that you've already done down on the to-do list just so you can check them off. You're like, oh yeah, I did that. I did
Little
that.
mind games we
Because
play
you're
with ourselves. Yeah. No, I think that
exactly.
I don't think that's harmful. I think that whatever it takes to get you motivated, because otherwise I'll get in a space where I'm just spending all my energy worrying about all the stuff I have to do, and not and I'm not in a mindset to do it because I'm just too overwhelmed by it. How do you maintain balance in your life while running a business that supports others' busy schedules? So you're the person that's trying to make their life easier. A lot of that lands on you. That's now your responsibility, your stress. How do you work a kind of a work-life balance, and how do you separate that out from your personal life?
Yeah, that's really interesting. And I feel like I could probably talk for an hour on work-life balance because I truly believe that you go through seasons in your life of, there's no such thing as like a perfect work-life balance. And
Right.
you go through seasons in your life where sometimes your life is, your personal life is taking up more than your business life, and your business life is then taking up more than your personal life. But I'm a true believer in, if you have big goals and you're really, really focused on that goal, then sometimes you have to make sacrifices in being able to get to that goal. And I really don't think that you can, if depending on how big your goal is, if you have a really big goal, I don't think that you can get and achieve that goal with saying, I'm only going to work 6 hours a day and then, 4 days a week.
Yeah.
You can get to it at a point, but you have to build the systems. You have to put in a lot of work and effort to do that. For me, I love working. My mother always tells me that I need a hobby. She's like, why don't you go out and like learn how to knit? And I'm like, Mom, I don't want to knit. She's like, well, I love crocheting. Why don't you crochet? I'm like, no, Mom, I don't want to do
That's
that.
too much like
I
knitting. Yeah.
love, yeah, right. I'm like, I love helping people achieve their goals. And if I could do that 24 hours a day and not sleep and eat, I would, because that's what fires me up and that's what keeps me going. And that's why I can trust the process, as you were talking about, because I bet you have it too, where you go left, you're trusting the process, but you have that big reason why you're continuing to do it and not just deciding to get out of the car at that crossroad and
Yeah.
give up.
Yeah.
There's that big deciding factor that is yours alone, that you really truly believe in. And so for me, um, you know, again, I love working. I love being with my clients. It fires me up. So I find that when I am with them, it's kind of like I'm relaxing anyway. I have a really supportive husband, which is very nice. So, and he's actually out on the road still. So he's gone like 250 days a year. So I can
Is he doing the
focus.
roadie thing as well?
He is. Yeah, we met out. We actually were introduced by Mick Jagger out on the road. Mick Jagger played matchmaker for us. So,
Very
yes.
nice. That is a great
Yeah.
story. Yeah.
Right? It's actually a really good one that I can share with you another time. But yeah, so I just, for me personally, I just, seeing clients wins is another thing that fires me up. I don't have to go out and have downtime or have a bubble bath or do things like that. Like, if I see a client succeed because of something that we've been able to do, that is reward enough for me. Now, I love a good hike. I go, when my husband is home, we do love going out in nature and hiking. I also am a crazy cat lady. I have way too many cats and I love spending time with them as much as I can, and that kind of clears my brain when I need to. I love reading. But honestly, truly, for me, my balance is being able to see my clients succeed.
That's great.
And I think that other people are almost scared to say that sometimes, because they're always kind of chasing what other people are doing, especially women in business.
Mm.
And they always think that, a lot of times they need that like 8 hours of work and, other time off type thing. But it really truly is a personal decision, and what fires you up, and how you have to, design your life to kind of live that perfect life that you want to live.
Yeah, I interviewed someone last week on this show, and when I asked about work-life balance, I forget, she renamed it work-life something else. I forget what the something else was, but basically she said, get rid of the word balance, because it's never going to be balance. Balance is not 50-50 or, 8 hours on, 16 off, or 12 off, my math, 12 off. It's at the beginning, it's going to be all work, no life. But over time, there should be a balance. It's just, don't expect it to be a linear balance. Like every day, oh, gotta go,
Yeah.
It's been 8 hours. I need my balance. You're going to lose some of your life to start a business. And there's going to be times in your business journey where you're going to have to shift that balance a little bit. And that's okay, as long as the permanent success, the long-term success of the business does not rely on Tarra working 32 hours a day, right?
Of course.
And only sleeping and then back to it again. That's not sustainable. But yeah, I think to your point, and my guest from last week is exactly that. And we all say work-life balance almost like a cliche, but I think we have to redefine what that really means from a practical standpoint. We just have time for a couple of questions. What advice would you give to someone who is hesitant maybe about taking the leap into entrepreneurship?
Oh, that's a loaded question,
I mean,
isn't it?
you could say don't do it, but
Don't do it.
don't do it.
No, just make sure that you are taking the leap for yourself and not because you see other people doing it, because that's not going to get you very far. And so just make sure that, it is a personal reason why you're deciding to do it. And it's not a reason of, that you're trying to solve like a bankruptcy problem or a money problem in the next like 2.5 weeks, because that's probably not going to help
Play the
you.
lottery. Go to Vegas
Yeah,
because your odds are a little
exactly. That
better,
would be a
right?
lot better. But yeah, just make sure that you are doing it for yourself and not copying anybody else, because that won't get you very far. And the other thing is if you are thinking about it all the time and you just can't get it out of your head, then I would say to definitely take the leap, because it's obviously something that you really, really want to do. And that's actually how I've made every decision in my life. Is I've been thinking about this for, a good 4 hours. I must be,
Yeah.
needing, like, the universe must be telling me that I
It's
have to do
telling you,
it. So,
Tara, yeah, listen.
yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I think I would even add to that. Talk to people who've been through the journey. I've talked to so many entrepreneurs now, and they all have, in many cases, excruciatingly difficult journeys where they had the business near-death experience over and over and over again, and it was so hard and cost them a lot, not just monetarily. And then if I ask them, would you do it again? They go, oh, yeah. Oh, in
Yeah.
a heartbeat. So
Hmm.
kind of listen to that and ask yourself, are you willing to pay the price, right?
Yeah.
Because it's going to be very expensive, not just money, of course, but emotionally, psychologically, physically. You may lose friends if you do what we've all done, hire friends and all that.
Even if you don't hire friends, because a lot of times you have to say no to work those 18 hours to get something off the ground. And your friends are like, come out for dinner, come out to this concert, come
Yes.
do this. And you have to make that decision. And
Yeah.
if you're not ready to make that decision, then you're probably not ready to get into entrepreneurship. Now, there are, you could have a side hustle. You
Yeah.
could, grow that. You could grow a really successful business up to a certain point with saying a lot of no's.
Sure.
But we're talking about, really big dreams and big goals, and how far do you want to take it? And
Right.
that's when you have to really start thinking about what you're going to sacrifice.
Yeah. Sacrifice is the key word there. There will be sacrifice proportionate to your goal. And
Exactly.
finally, the last question, Tara. How did you define success when you first started a business, and how do you define it today?
That's a great question. Success when I first started my business is probably the same as I do now, because it's always based on my dream. And it was always based on the dream of helping more than one crazy rock star at a time. And when I very first started my business, I was always thinking, did I help somebody today? I didn't even care if I got paid for it. Did I help somebody? Yes. Okay. So today was a success. And today I still think about that. Was I able to help somebody? Was I able to give a little bit of advice? Was I able to help somebody jump into entrepreneurship or not? Or, all of these different things. There's actually a checklist that I go through in my head before I go to sleep every night. And one of the questions I ask is exactly that. Have I helped somebody today get one step closer to their goals? And every day I want to try and say yes. And then I also ask myself, have I worked as hard as I possibly can? I.e., have I given my all, everything that I can give today? Sometimes that's not a lot, but if I've worked myself to full capacity every single day towards my big dream of being able to help as many people as I possibly can achieve their goals, if I can answer those two questions, then I know I've had a successful day. All the other crappy things in business can happen too. You can be getting sued. You can, be going almost bankrupt. You can be having really bad days. But for me, if I can answer those two questions, I'm like, oh yeah, I actually kind of had a good day and I can keep going on to the next day.
Well, when you go to bed tonight, you don't need to go through your list because you have helped people today.
Check, check.
Exactly. And hopefully you've helped quite a few people today. Tarra, thank you. Thank you so much for being my guest today and sharing your journey and your wisdom and your experiences with me and my audience. I truly appreciate it.
Oh, thanks so much for having me. I can't wait to come back and tell my more Mick Jagger stories.
You know what? You owe me a name. You said I'm not going to mention the name. We're going to get the name out of you next time. I will follow up with you, and hopefully we can have you back, and we can keep track of your amazing journey. For my audience who would like to get more information about Take It Easy Group, if you are watching this on YouTube, right down here it says Show More. I'll have information on Tarra's company and a link to the website. If you're listening to this on your favorite podcast app, just go to your podcast app, look at the show notes, and that information will be there as well. Tarra, thank you again so much, and continued success.
Thank you so much for having me. I had a great time.
Me too. Well, that's a wrap. Thanks for joining me on this episode of the Reluctant Entrepreneur Podcast. A very special thanks to Tarra Stubbins for being my guest on the show. The Reluctant Entrepreneur Podcast is available on all major podcast sites and on the Reluctant Entrepreneur YouTube channel. We've been busy recording future episodes with fascinating guests, so don't miss out. Subscribe to the podcast to be notified when new episodes are released. We release new episodes on the first and third Tuesday of every month. If you're an entrepreneur and would like to be a guest on my show, please let me know. Visit mikeconrad.com/podcast and apply to be a guest. Just remember that's Conrad spelled with a K. If you'd like to reach out to me, my email address is mike@mikeconrad.com. Again, Conrad with a K. If you're interested in my book, The Reluctant Entrepreneur, Anatomy of a Business Startup, From Uncertainty to Unstoppable, it's available as a paperback and a Kindle version, both available on Amazon, and as an audiobook available on Audible and Amazon. Thanks again so much for listening or watching. Until I see you again, be unstoppable.